Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and I know I had a little delay last week. Things got complicated, so videos are coming out today, and I'll try to do some more on Thursday if I can, but I might switch to just once a week going forward. But today we're talking about camcorders and home videos or home movies. Before YouTube and the rise of the internet, when you wanted to make home videos, you had to have a camcorder. Now, in the old days, you used films. You had little handheld Super 8 cameras, and you would shoot your home movies on film. And this was a whole fucking process. You had to get them developed, and then you had to have a projector and a screen and an area to project them. If there was no sound, then you either had to do a voiceover and talk over them, or you had to put on some music in the background or whatever. It depended upon the capabilities of your camcorder or your camera, I should say, your handheld camera. Then in the 80s, we got VHS and Betamax camcorders. And then things got really interesting in the 90s, in the early 2000s. We started to get digital cameras. Now, we had a few more tapes. There was Video 8, also known as 8mm camera tape, reminiscent of the 8mm film. But these were actual cassettes. And then there was High 8, which was the same thing, but a little bit better quality, but not by much. And then there was DV tape, which was a digital tape that you had to have. You had to hook it up to a computer in order to edit the videos and put them on a DVD or a video CD, presumably, um, which was very complicated. And then things got weird. We got compact flash, we got SD cards, we got memory sticks, we got digital cameras with hard drives built in. And then we just sort of like settled on SD cards and internal storage before we pretty much did away with camcorders as a society. Now, they still exist for some people, especially, like videographers who do weddings and things. But for the most part, most people have just reverted to using their cell phones, their smartphones, because they have video capabilities. Now, I'm going to show you the first camcorder I ever bought with my own money, and I still have it. I bought it in 2004. This is a JVC eVireo hybrid. Now, what this is it's a digital camera. It does not take tapes. It has a 30 gigabyte hard disk built in, and it's a hard disk. It is not a flash drive, and it is not what are they called? So it's not a SSD. It is a hard disk. So I don't know if this camera even works because I don't know if the hard disk is damaged or not, and I don't have the charger anymore. But it also has a slot on the bottom here where you can plug in an SD card. However, it can only read SD cards, I believe, up to 128 megabytes, but I can't remember. It cannot read very big memory cards. And it does not have a lot of space on the hard disk because it saves the video in standard definition. It's, well, actually, not even standard definition. Uh, it can do 320 by 240, or it can do 720 by 480, which I think is standard definition. But it can only do interlaced. It cannot do progressive scan, but it can do widescreen, and it does have a widescreen preview camera here, which is really cool. However, the biggest flaw with this camera is it records everything in MOV files, and they are not very well compressed, so they're gigantic. They take up a lot of space. A 5-minute video would take up like 8 gigabytes. They were huge. This is not a very efficient camera. Now, right after I bought this one, I did buy one that took mini DV tapes, and then I also had a few different ones that could take. I had VHS. I had a few big clunky VHS ones. I never had any VHS C or Betamax ones, but I did have one that took um, high 8, but I don't remember. I'm gonna just be honest. I don't remember if the high 8 camcorders were also compatible with regular 8mm. I don't remember, but those were all the ones I had before I got my last one, which was it had a digital memory built in, and then it had like an SD, like flash memory built in, and then it took bigger SD cards than this one. Um, and then I switched to a DSLR, which only used SD cards, which is what I used the whole time I worked at the newspaper in the news industry for photography as well as videography whenever I needed to do videos. A lot of the videos on my YouTube channel, my early videos, some of them are still up there. We're done with that camera, especially my All-Star Toy Wrestling videos were done with that camera. Since I moved from Texas, I have not been able to locate all the components that I need for that camera, so I can't use it currently. I have the shell, but I don't know where the battery is. I don't know where the charger is. I don't know where the SD card is. I don't know where the lenses are. Um, the light attachment, none of that. I just have the shell, and the shell is worthless on its own. So I don't have the money to buy a new one, and I just haven't been able to go through all of my mountains of junk to find all the individual components because they're spread out everywhere. And there's a very real possibility some of the components may have been left in Texas when I left because I did leave in a big hurry. So, um, most of my first camcorder, like I said, was this one, and I got it in 2004. Now, before that, I couldn't afford a camcorder. Um, so I was not able to do video very easily. Now, what I did for my earliest days of experimenting with video production was I hooked up my Super Nintendo to my VCR, and then I hooked up my I had a cassette deck that had a microphone input, and I plugged the microphone into the cassette deck, and I plugged that into the VCR. So I had the Super Nintendo audio, the red cable going into the red port on the VCR, and coming out of the boombox, I had the white audio cable going into the white RCA plug on the VCR. So I would play Super Nintendo games and then talk over them and provide commentary of what I was doing as I was playing the game. And then I would edit these onto tapes. So that was my earliest experiments with video editing, as a teenager. Before I got into high school and I was able to get into video production class and start doing stuff, in school, which is where I really started to learn how to do video production. So when I got my first camcorder, this one, it came with special software which I can't even find anymore. So even if I could find a charger to get this thing turned on, and hypothetically if the hard drive still works, um, and I found that it takes a very special USB cable that I don't even know if they make anymore. It's just very, very specific components. Even if I get it all hooked up to the computer, I still have to have that software to be able to get the videos off of here and convert them into a format that this computer can read. Um, because it does save them as MOV files, but it doesn't save them as .mov on the hard drive. It saves them as a proprietary format on the hard drive, and then when you export them to the computer using the software, it turns them into MOV files, which I don't know how it works, but I just remember doing it. And then once you have it as an MOV file and you have the right plugins in your NLE video editing software, because you had to have the right plugins. Once you have all that set up, then you can edit it in your NLE, nonlinear editing video software like Vegas or whatever, Adobe Premiere or whatever you used. I used Vegas. And then you can export it as whatever you want, whatever your software is capable of exporting. Don't use Movie Maker. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's rubbish. But anyways, I didn't. So mostly what I did with this camera was just experimental stuff. Now, I did 2 student films that are on my channel, but they're delisted, so you can't find them. Um, they I shot them both on this camera. And then after a while, I switched to using the one that used the DV tapes because it wasn't higher quality, but it recorded in a standard MPEG 2 format, which was a lot easier to get to the computer because I could just drag and drop the files from the once I plugged it into the computer. It was a lot easier than this hunk of junk. And I don't even know if this thing even still works or if it turns on. I don't even know. I have no way of testing it. So it's just a relic of the past. Um, Also, what I did was I filmed my friends. We would go to the skate park and they would do their skateboarding stuff and I would film them. Or we would go wherever we went, me and my friends who were breakdancers, and we would breakdance and I would film my friends breakdancing and we would make breakdancing videos. You know, we'd put music over the top of them and we would play them back for our friends. So I did stuff like that. After a while, once everybody in town figured out I had a camcorder and I was pretty proficient with editing and stuff and putting things on DVD, I started getting hired to do quinceañeras and weddings and sweet 16s and graduations and stuff like that. So I had a side business for a while. I did it on the side. I didn't promote it. I didn't print business cards or advertise or anything. It was just word of mouth. It was like I'd get at most 2, maybe 3 jobs a year, so it wasn't like a business. It was just like if somebody needed me and, they were like, hey, what do you want? And I'd be like, give me $200. And they'd be like, okay, I would do the job. And then they would give me the $200. And I was like, cool, here's your DVD. Thanks for your business. Tell your friends. Now, sometimes I would barter with people. Instead of just like, hey, give me the cash, I'd be like, hey, I have a bill that needs paid and it's this much, will you pay my bill for me? And they would do that. Or I would trade video favor, I would do a DVD for somebody and they would give me something I wanted. That's how I got some of the subwoofers and speaker components, stereo components for my car because I was decking out my car because I was a teenager and I wanted a monster sound system in my trunk of my car because I listened to hip hop music, G-funk, and there's a lot of fucking bass in that music, and you want it to vibrate your back because when you're a teenager, that's what you want, which is why I'm hard of hearing today. So eventually, this would progress into a professional interest. I decided to go to college and study broadcasting. And so in college, I majored in broadcasting and I minored in theater. And the reason why I did that was because my college, the university I went to, did not have a film school or film studies program. So this was as close as I could get to film school. Because on the theater side, I would learn, blocking and staging and script writing and acting and all that stuff, you know. And then on the broadcasting side, I would learn the technical stuff, like news writing and photography, video editing, web design, graphic design, stuff like that. And I did take I took an intro to media class, I took a film studies class and a cinematography class. So I got as like close to a film degree as I could get at this university, even though they didn't actually offer a film degree. So I did some student film in college, and fortunately, I was able to use the college equipment, which I would classify the college equipment as prosumer level. It was not professional level, but it was above consumer level. So it was like good quality stuff, but mid tier. It wasn't like the high quality stuff you would use in the field, which sucks because you would expect them to be letting us use the stuff we're going to use in the field. But once I got in the field, I realized that newspapers make you bring your own cameras. So your camera is whatever quality camera you own. Because every newspaper I worked at required me to own my own camera. Now, the TV stations I worked at did provide video cameras to the MMJs, the multimedia journalists. But everybody else we we didn't have cameras at the TV station. I was a producer, well, camera operator, and then I was a assistant producer and production assistant, and then I was a producer. So I had to climb the ladder, but I got my way up to producer. And producer is pretty much supervisor. You're like the boss, the one who's organizing the show, telling the journalists what they're reporting on, and finding the news content and a whole bunch of stuff. It's a very complex job. It's very hard to explain. I'll do a video on it someday, um, because it's multiple jobs in one, especially at a small TV station in a small market. Because we couldn't afford video editors, so as producer, I had to do all my own video editing, which sucked. But anyways, yeah, it was a very intense job. After I left the television business, I started my YouTube channels. Now I had been doing podcasts and I had a YouTube channel while I was still working in the news business, but that YouTube channel's gone and all those videos have been deleted. I have since deleted that website. It's no longer accessible. I've rebranded after I transitioned. Obviously, I'm transgender. After I transitioned and changed my name and everything, I didn't want those videos out there anymore. And that's when I bought a HD Logitech um, webcam, which is this thing that I'm using here to record these videos. And I switched to a vlog format, which is what I do now, because it's easier. Um, so I still have my reflectors and lights and, um, my balancer. I still have all my equipment, like all my professional equipment to produce videos, like actual videos, like quality videos. But like I said, most of my components are spread out all over the place. I don't know where they all are. And even if I was to piece it all together, that's too much work. I'm just not interested in doing that anymore. The reason why I was studying film in college is originally my career path was going to be I was going to work at a local TV station until I got enough experience and do like indie films, like student films and short films on the side, and then YouTube stuff on the side until I could eventually make my way to Hollywood. That was the plan. Get into working on a television show, like a Netflix series or an AMC series like The Walking Dead or something like that. Like I wanted to work in television. I wanted to do movies for a while, but the more I looked into how much goes into movies and how competitive it is, I changed my mind and I decided since most of my experience was in television anyways, I wanted to get into television. But when COVID happened and I lost my job because all the news jobs disappeared, all the newspapers I worked for went out of business or gutted their staff to a skeleton crew, and I was unfortunately not a part of that crew. I was expendable. So since then, finding jobs in the field has been even harder than ever because now you're competing with a lot of out of work journalists who are all scrambling for the same job, and there's just not enough jobs to go around. And unfortunately, we're also competing with AI writers and AI photography and AI, etc. So now it's even harder to find a job in the field than it was when I started out in 2011. So good luck. Now, when I had my VHS camcorders, I was shooting stuff on tape, and I had tape to tape editors, VCRs and stuff. Those projects were just for me. I never uploaded those to YouTube. I just put them on the computer. I would show them to my friends. Those were just for me. Those were just for fun. Those videos are all gone. Long gone. I didn't back them up. I didn't save them. They're not in the cloud. They're just gone. Whatever hard drive they were on has either been destroyed, lost, or thrown in the trash, or wiped clean. So most of my work I have no record of it. I used to have an IMDb page But after I changed my name, I requested IMDb delete it because I only had one credit to my name anyways, and they deleted the page because the TV show I worked for was canceled, and because it was a local show, it only had two crew credited anyways, so they complied and they deleted the listing. So the show, its page has been deleted from IMDb as well. And after my IMDb page got deleted, Wikipedia deleted my Wikipedia page because they're like, hey, you're nobody now. So all record of my past life has pretty much been erased. So, I mean, if you look hard enough, you can still find the newspaper archives, but most of the newspapers I worked for don't have a digital archive. So you have to actually drive to the newspaper and ask for a specific month and week and issue to look up my articles, and you're not going to find them. And I have a portfolio. I have a folder with my best clippings in it, digitized, so I have them on a file. I can show prospective employers if I ever decide to go back into that field. But as far as like my digital presence, it's gone because the newspapers I worked for didn't archive. And the TV stations I worked for, because I was producer, my name wasn't on the work I did because producer doesn't get credit because I was doing news. So, the news reporters would upload their videos, their names would be on their videos, and the anchors, during the newscast, their name would pop up, and they would introduce themselves during the newscast. But because I was behind the scenes, there's no way to go back and search which newscasts I worked on specifically because my name isn't attached to any of them. So that's a good thing for me because I was doing all of this pre-transition. Because when I left the news business to transition because the news industry wouldn't let me transition at the time because I was a notable figure in the community, and everyone was like, "No, you're well known in the community. We hired you as X. We need you to be X. We're not going to let you change your name and appearance and everything because that won't work for our market." So I left the news business to transition, and they were well within their rights to do that. And it was just one of those things that I just decided, you know what? Let's leave the news business. So I left the news business, and I have not looked at going back. So for me, getting into home videos as a kid is what led me to doing YouTube videos today and going into college and studying film and television and theater and working in the industry for 7 years. So I did it for 7 years. So I didn't just like do it for a day and then leave. I climbed the ladder all the way to producer, which is a high ranking job in the field. But I left on purpose because one, I'm bipolar and have other mental health issues, including PTSD. So it's harder. The older I get, the harder it is to manage my bipolar. So it's harder for me to concentrate and work in that high stress environment. So I'm much rather working in a field that isn't as high stress because that was what my therapist recommended. She's like, "Hey, you need to get out of the news business because it's killing you mentally. You're going to have a mental breakdown," which I did twice, and had to take some time off from work because my employer was like, "Hey, you need to chill." So, yeah, for the most part, I recommend if you're going to get into video production today, um, obviously you can start with a cell phone. You're good, or a camcorder, not camcorder, but a webcam is good enough for most people. But if you really want to get in the business, I do recommend at least getting prosumer uh, stuff. So bare minimum, you're going to need a good quality camera. So either a video camera or a DSLR. You can get by with a DSLR, except for the attachments you need to make films. If you want to do movies, are harder to get for DSLRs because they make those lenses and those attachments for the lenses for camcorders for video cameras. They don't necessarily make them for DSLRs. Now, some DSLRs do, the high end ones, but it's harder. So unless you want to go into still photography, I don't recommend buying a DSLR. If you want to do video production, I recommend a dedicated video camera still. Obviously, you want one that can do high definition. You want one that can do um, that can save to an industry standard format like MP4, most likely, and has standard USB outs. Not proprietary USB cables that you'll never be able to find aftermarket. And don't get one with a hard disk drive because they're finicky, and if they break, your camera's dead. So don't do that. I don't recommend that. Other than that, this isn't really a tips and tricks video, although I'll probably do a tips and tricks video because I worked in the industry for a long time. So I do have some advice and tips. So if you want to get in the news business, if that's something you're aspiring to, whether you want to be a writer, a photographer, you want to be a producer or a journalist, a news reporter or an MMJ, yeah, talk to me. Leave me a comment or reach out to me through Twitter, StephanieBree22, and I'll give advice, and I can hook you up with people that are still in the business because I'm still connected. I still have friends in the business, and I am still a member of the Trans Journalist Association. So I can still network with professionals who are in the business. I'm just not personally currently pursuing a career in the business because I left. But I can still give you some advice, tips, and tricks and stuff. So as far as cameras go, if you want to do television or YouTube, even, um, for that a DSLR is fine because you're not going to need widescreen, ultra wide lenses or fisheye lenses or anything like that, to do those fancy shots you can't get on a DSLR because you're just going to want the standard shot, the headshot pretty much, or just the widescreen, the wide shot. So since you're only looking at two, maybe three shots, your camera's going to be fine. Maybe a close up or um, what they call MCU, not the Disney Marvel MCU, but medium close up, which is what this is, what you're seeing here. This is a medium close up. Um, it's not framed correctly, obviously. You're supposed to use the rule of thirds, but it's close enough. I'm fine with it. But there's also extreme close up, and then there's wide shot, and there's other shots. Those you can get with a DSLR. If you want to do YouTube videos specifically, I can't help you if you want to do TikTok because I think you need a therapist if you want to do TikTok because I hate TikTok. But anyways, if you want to do YouTube, like I said, a webcam is good enough as long as it's an HD camera that can do widescreen, and you want a good lighting setup. Lighting is the most important thing, more than anything, because you can film on any camera. As long as you have good lighting, you'll get a good quality picture. So lighting is more important than picture quality. So resolution, or if it can do 4K, if it can do 24p, etc. All those little technical things it can do, those are secondary to lighting. So if you want to get into film, television, or video production, learn lighting first, because a well-lit video is better on a standard definition, or just even just basic HD like 720p, is gonna look better than a poorly lit video on an 8K camera in 24p. Just so you know. So don't worry so much about getting a good expensive camera. The first thing you want to do is learn lighting, and I'll do a whole tips and tricks videos on lighting. There's a couple of tricks. You're going to hear the 3-point lighting. That's one way to do it, but there's other ways. Basically, you want to light the face. That's the most important thing. So as long as the face is well lit, that's what matters the most, or the subject. Whatever's the subject. If you're doing a car video, you want to light the car. If you're doing a toy video, you want to make sure the toys are lit. Whatever the camera wants your eye to focus on needs to be well lit. That's the most important thing. So that's all I have for camcorder and home video memories. Stay cool.